Hello and welcome. My name is Adrena. I am the owner and accountant here at Accounting by Adrena. And in today's video, we are going to continue our series of summer reading book reviews. Now, today's book is Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I think you probably have already heard about it. If not in pop culture, or maybe you have read the book already yourself, I thought I would just share my take on it and why I like the book. And I figured let's just make dinner together and we can talk about this book. So let's get to it. I'm actually making kind of like a summer dinner. It's going to have watermelon, a salad, barbecue, shredded chicken with mashed potatoes and corn. This is not an everyday type of meal, and I am just doing this because I had an abundance of potatoes. I had corn in my fridge. I had chicken. It kind of made itself, and I thought I would just film myself while I share with you my thoughts on this book. It's actually a really popular book, and a lot of the concepts have made its way into pop culture, so I'm sure you have already heard of this book, but I thought I would just share with you my take on it. But before we get into that, I actually already recorded a video on the book called 10% Happier. And if you haven't seen that, I will go ahead and link that down below in the description box. I also have a weekly newsletter that goes out, and it kind of informs you of all of my new YouTube videos. So if you haven't signed up for that, I'll also leave a link down in the description box below. And let's jump right into it. This book is actually divided up into 4 different parts, and I found it to be quite easy to read and to consume, and I do want to provide as much context as I can without giving away too much of it, because I would definitely highly recommend reading it. I will also say that James Clear has a blog and an Instagram account, so he does post his content over there as well. I will go ahead and link those down below. He has kind of like a site where you can go to download some visual representations of things that he talks about in the book. So all of that will be linked down in the description box below. I did want to stress how much I really enjoyed this book, and it's much like 10% Happier. It's a book that I come back to time and time again. I probably have gone through this book about 4 times since I've purchased it. So the intro discusses essentially how he got to where he is, which I won't get into in this video. He believes in the concepts of this book, but because he has actually lived it. In his intro, he states, "Changes that seem small and unimportant at first will compound into remarkable results if you're willing to stick with them for years." He goes on to say, "The quality of our lives often depends on the quality of our habits. With the same habits, you'll end up with the same results. But with better habits, anything is possible." The 4 different parts of this book go as follows. So part 1 is the fundamentals, why tiny changes make a big difference. Part 2, the 4 laws of behavior change. Part 3, the advanced tactics. And part 4, the Goldilocks zone, how to stay motivated in life and work. I will not go into great detail about what is all included in these 4 different parts, but what I want to say is he makes this book sound so actionable. Everything that he says in this book, it makes complete sense, and it feels like, yes, I can create better habits. And so let's just get into a couple of quotes that I pulled out from the book that I really kind of resonate with, that I feel like speaks to the type of book it is. So the first quote, and these are all in kind of like the part 1 of the book. So the first quote is, "If you can get 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done." The second quote, it says, "My results had very little to do with the goals I set and nearly everything to do with the systems I followed." He goes on to say, "Goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results." So he is arguing to kind of forget about the goals and focus more on your systems, which is incredible for me to think about, because I mean, if you have been here for any amount of time, one of the things I always talk about is the program that I use online called Asana. And basically what I've done is create a system that really and truly works in terms of my bookkeeping clients and making sure that I am on task on a day-to-day, month-by-month basis. He goes on to argue that the problem isn't you, it's because you have the wrong systems for your change. So I quote, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems," end quote. And this is something that kind of is resounding in pop culture right now. I think we've all heard this quote before, but it just makes so much sense that if you have bad systems in place, then you're not going to be reaching your goals. He talks about what he has called, maybe he coined this actually, called the habit loop, which starts off as cue, then craving, then response, and reward. So I'm going to say that again. Cue, craving, response, reward. So he goes into detail about each of these aspects of the habit loop. And just think of a circle. It starts with a cue, it goes on to craving, it goes on to response, goes on to reward, goes back to cue. So it's just a big circle, as he calls it, the habit loop. Later on in the book, he says, "No behavior happens in isolation. Each action becomes a cue that triggers the next behavior." And this actually leads us to the most widely known concept that James Clear coined, and it is called habit stacking. So this is where you build upon any new habit you want to create off of an existing habit. And this is really what I want to go into, because when we think about habit stacking, if you're new to the concept, this is how I want to explain it to you in just my own personal experience. So when I first started my business, it was like 2018, I think. I was still working full time. So I didn't go full time with my business until April of 2019. Now, between April of 2019 to March of 2020, I felt like I was sort of like recovering from some of the toxic work environments that I was coming from. And I didn't really have like a solid routine that I could get my work done. I was just getting my work done whenever I could get my work done. And if that meant working on Saturdays and Sundays, then that's what I did. Just because I wanted to make sure that in my life I was prioritizing my client work, because I really wanted my business to work. And so that did require a lot of sacrifices on my behalf, and I don't necessarily recommend doing it that way. I mean, I would definitely make sure that you have better boundaries than what I had in my first year going full-time with my business, but that's beside the point. So in, March of 2020, we all know what happened, and I feel like for the rest of 2020, I was kind of floundering a little bit, and I really needed to create a better routine in terms of getting myself to work in the mornings. I had a really hard time with my morning routine. So I did a lot of brainstorming, and I considered, okay, what would be a really like nourishing morning routine for myself? Well, breakfast was always a priority for me. I love breakfast. It's my favorite meal of the day. And if you follow me over on my @Adrena Vlogs Instagram account, you'll probably see a lot of breakfast items because that's just my favorite thing ever. But I knew that I wanted to prioritize breakfast before getting into work, but I didn't really know what else I wanted to do during my morning routine. I didn't know what felt nourishing, so I was trying a bunch of different things. And so what I ended up doing was creating a habit stack for myself for my morning routine that goes a little something like this. Wake up. Once I wake up, I go into the restroom and I get all of my flossing, my teeth, my face, everything washed and cleaned and ready for the day. And then I go back to my bedroom and I do some meditation, I do some journaling, and So all of that is done, getting ready, all of that is done in the first part of my morning routine. And I kind of have like a list of items that I go through. And I included the flossing because flossing was something that I had a really hard time with, making sure that I was flossing every day. And now I am actually flossing twice a day, which I think is a total win. So yeah, there's one thing. If you want to start flossing more, create a habit stack. So if it means like you're brushing your teeth and then you're flossing, like create that habit stack where you bring out your toothbrush and your floss at the same time. So that's a trigger for your brain to say, okay, yeah, I do need to floss. So what I did was I made sure that all of these were listed out and I created little triggers for myself for each one of them. I made getting my bed made as part of the meditation. So I would listen to a meditation while I was making my bed, and I felt like that was very cathartic for me. And then I could go into journaling and reading, and then all of that felt like I was a full person by the time I was done. And then I was able to go make breakfast and then head to work. So that is kind of like, I feel like the win in terms of what I did for my own personal experience to create that habit. And I wouldn't have done that without having read this book. And so I definitely I cannot stress enough how much I actually really enjoyed this book. And if you aren't convinced yet, I will go ahead and leave a link to James Clear's website down in the description box below so you can check him out. And that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for being here and making dinner with me. I will see you guys in my next video. Let's see what we've got. We've got the barbecue chicken, which looks delicious. And we have the corn on the cob. Yum. Salad. Watermelon. Oh, this watermelon is so delicious. And mashed potatoes for days. Bon appetit.